and welcome back to D's Nerds. I'm Michelle, and today I'm going to be talking about what I've been reading. So I have been a very busy woman lately. I have been reading a lot of books. I have been flying through them. Just all of my free time pretty much has been spent reading where I can manage it, and I've been having a lot of fun. So I want to kind of go over the things that I've been reading since the last time we did a video last month. And we're going to start off with a World of Warcraft book. So this is Cycle of Hatred, and this one takes place after the Well of Eternity trilogy that I was reading last time. And so this one is back in the present and takes place where basically right before World of Warcraft, the game would have started. It's Thrall and Jaina Proudmoore basically trying to hold everything together and keep the Horde and Alliance from fighting, but the Burning Blade has crept its way into Kalimdor and is wreaking all kinds of havoc on both sides, trying to frame the other and cause that conflict, which we know eventually does happen. But it's a rather short one for these books, but it's a good one. It's not great. Actually, my favorite part of it is Jaina discovering Aegwynn, who was Medivh's mother, the Guardian, and getting to spend a lot of time with her and her story. I think that's actually my favorite part of this book. The rest of it's okay. Like, it's not a bad book. It's just that I think because this one is short and because it has a very specific point to make, it's just not as complex as I tend to like in these, but it's still an enjoyable read. Next up, I've been reading more Ruby Dixon books. Surprise! On my Kindle. And so I completed what's available for right now of the Rizdiverse books. I jumped in then to the other ones that I've been reading, which are the Corsair books, the Corsair Brothers. And I think actually the Corsair Brothers books ended up probably being some of my favorite ones so far. They each focused on one of the brothers that actually was introduced in the earlier Corsairs series. So this is like Corsairs, and then there's Corsairs Brothers. And so the Brothers ones pull characters from those. They have the little sister is their ship, and their little sister, who was actually just a human that they kind of adopted into their little family. She was in one of the Corsairs original books as one of the love interests. And so now they've got their own books. And I actually think that the storyline that Ruby Dixon built with the three of the brothers plus this other Masaka that they end up having to deal with named Strake, I think that's actually probably my favorite so far of anything I've read of hers. I really liked that it was one big story with higher stakes, a larger scope of places that they go, so it was really good. I think I may do kind of a combo Rizdiverse Corsairs video here pretty soon, because those kind of like Ice Planet Barbarians and Ice Home that I did together, they definitely are very well interconnected. And now that I've kind of completed what's available, aside from the current serial that she's writing over Matthias, or Matthias, I'm not sure you're supposed to say that, but aside from that, I've read them all now. So very enjoyable books, and I was glad to have read them. And then she also did like a little spin-off too, from the Corsairs Brothers. There's the whole storyline that kind of overarches this one is that they were looking for this particular ship that was kind of like a legend that had been lost all of these years ago, and it supposedly have a huge, expensive, like high value cargo that if they could get it, then that would just like make their lives. And so they do track down the ship, but when they discover the cargo, they discover that the cargo was actually humans and just people who were for sale. So not just humans, it was other species as well, but the other species tended to be either clones or gladiators. And when the brothers go to the ship, they discover that one of the gladiators that's in one of the pods, because they're not like walking around the ship, they're all in like these stasis pods, but when they look in one of them, they see this infamous gladiator Crolden the Ruiner, who is terrifying. He was like the worst, most infamous gladiator for cruelty that there was. And so then Bad Guy and Worst Guy are both about Crolden, but they're both about Crolden's clones, because what they end up finding is that the Crolden that's there is actually not the original Crolden, it's a clone. And so Bad Guy is one of the clones, and Worst Guy is a different one, and they're both on different planets. They end up together on Rizda 3 eventually, but those two books kind of connect in both with the Corsairs and the Rizdiverse, so I think that's pretty cool. Next up is a book that I do have, and you saw in my book haul here, like I think a week or two ago, but that is The Hating Game, and I actually loaned my book out, so I don't have it in my hands anymore, but I have now read it twice, and I'm actually in the middle of listening to it on audiobook again. I have a review on it that'll be coming out really soon, so you'll hear lots more about that one coming up. The other one that I read and have done a review on, which actually just went up, is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This is another book that was in my book haul that I absolutely adored. I've been kind of finding myself enjoying romance and romantic comedies even a little bit more lately, although I'm still pickier with romantic comedies because sometimes they're just so hokey. Like, that's a whole nother tirade. But I don't I don't want the really, really cheesy ones. I want one that I can kind of like dig into a little bit. And I've tried reading a couple that just the premise was too cheesy or the girl was too annoying or whatever. And so this was one that definitely passed all of my tests. And so you can look at that review too. Next up is another one that I read for Kindle, but it is a Sally Thorne book who is the same author as The Hating Game. And it's called Second First Impressions. And I believe this is actually her most recent book. And Second First Impression was really cute. The main character, whose name's completely escaping me right now because I don't have my Kindle in front of me, but she works at a retirement community and she's kind of running the place while the real boss is out on vacation. And she is very kind of grandma-ish. She, dresses really kind of like frumpy and she doesn't really do a lot. She doesn't like to get out. She's really just kind of conservative from her upbringing and has sort of had some past trauma dealing with that. And she runs into, at the gas station one evening, Theo, who is this has this gorgeous long hair and he's on a motorcycle, and she pays for his gas out of kindness because she realizes that he has no money. But when he goes to thank her and she turns around, he thinks that she's in costume because she looks like a grandma. And so he laughs at her. And then it comes to find out that his father is actually the one who has recently purchased the retirement community property that she runs with the intent to probably turn it into something else. And so the book kind of becomes about her trying to save the retirement community, and then Theo, whose dad dumps him there, ends up living in like the other side of the duplex that she lives in on site, and they become friends. And of course it turns into more over time, but it's kind of all about second first impressions on both their parts, because her first impression of him was that he was a jerk because he made fun of her, and his first impression of her was that she was like a grandma. So it's kind of about the two of them debunking that over the course of the book. And it's a really cute one. I didn't love it as much as I love The Hating Game, but it's definitely one I would willingly reread because it was a lot of fun. And the old people in it, the two elderly women that live together, and Theo ends up being like their errand boy for the book, and they are so much fun. I really like their characters a lot, and they kind of get their own sweet story arc in the background as well. Next up, I've been reading so much on my Kindle lately, so sorry I don't have more books to like hold up. I read Attachments by Rainbow Rowell. That was my first Rainbow Rowell book. I thought the premise was so cute. The premise of it is that this guy, Lincoln, works at a company as basically the internet security guy, and he is the one who screens everybody's emails when they're pinged for something they're not supposed to be talking about, or, checking to make sure people aren't doing stuff they're not supposed to do online. He keeps seeing the flagged conversations of these two friends, and the two friends are, just talking about their lives. One of them is married and one of them is single, and as he keeps reading their conversations, he falls more and more in love with Beth, who is the single one of them. But she has no idea who he is, and he has not even seen her before, so he doesn't know who she is. And the premise of that sounded so cute, but for some reason this book just fell so flat for me. I actually gave it like a 5 out of 10. It was dull. I really wanted to love it, but Lincoln's character was like, he was kind of endearing, but at the same time, like, he had some habits that were just like, really, dude? I don't know. I didn't fall in love with him as a main character. And then the two women characters that are exchanging the emails, they're okay. They're just, I think you're seeing me struggle for words because it was just not memorable in that way. Like, the premise, I felt like, had so much there that could have worked out really well, and it just ultimately becomes more, like, flat and almost a little dramatic versus, like, comedic and cute like I would have expected it to be. So I was ultimately disappointed in that one, but I'm glad that I gave it a shot because it was something a little out of my comfort zone. Next up is a book that I've got to do a review on because holy smokes. This is Verity by Colleen Hoover, which if you're a really big reader, you may have already read this or heard about it. I really had just heard that it was supposed to be really good, and so I picked it up. And this is my first Colleen Hoover. I had not read any of her other books, and so all I knew about it was what it said on the back. It was a phenomenal book. Having said that, I will probably never read it again. I will go into a lot more detail about that when I do a review of it on its own, because I could probably talk for quite some time on this book. But it is a good book, and if you're into thrillers and you're into mystery sort of things, but especially the thriller part, I think you'll like this. It's just an uncomfortable book. So the next book out of my book haul that I got read was The Last Legacy by Adrienne Young, and this one is related to but not a sequel to her Fable and Namesake books. So if you've read those, it's great. You're going to have a little bit better sort of framing of the world that this takes place in, but you don't have to have read it. So one of the people that was on the ship with Fable was Oster Roth. And so this is actually about the rest of his family. This is Bryn Roth, and she has been raised outside of Bastion. She's been sent off to Nimsmire for basically her entire upbringing with her aunt, and so she came back when she was 18 after her uncle Heinrich summoned her, and she has to kind of make her place in this family, which is essentially a crime family. It's kind of like, I guess, this world's version of like a mob family. Like, they have all these connections and they're kind of shady, but they also kind of deal with really important people. And in this book, they're really trying to kind of make something legitimate of themselves, at least in one aspect. And so Bryn finds herself in the kind of uncomfortable position of walking into the middle of it. What they're trying to do at this point is get one of the merchant's rings that allows them to trade and make their living off of jewels and jewelry. And so the silversmith Ezra is the other main character in this, Ezra Finch, and he is working for the Roths. Works closely with Heinrich, and he is not really happy, and she can see that, but she doesn't really understand why. She thinks it's something against her, but basically he just has his own agenda for what he's trying to do. And so very much in the same way that Fable and Namesake, there was kind of a greater plot afoot that people are trying to kind of work around. I feel like that was what this book was. It's just that it's all encapsulated in the one book rather than two. But it was extremely enjoyable. I loved it. I love this world. I'm constantly amazed at her descriptions and how she makes me feel like I am walking these streets of Bastion with the characters. Just such a cool thing, and I hope that she continues to write books in this world. I do know that she's got a prequel now coming out because so many people requested a book about Saint, who is Fable's father in Fable and Namesake, that she is writing a prequel about Saint and then Fable's mother. So that book is supposed to come out, I think, in November. I'm pumped about that one. But she always has the prettiest covers of her books too. Like, look at that. That's gorgeous. All right, next up, I've got a couple of arcs that I've actually read. So I've just now kind of tried to get into the arc game on NetGalley, and I got really lucky. So speaking of Adrienne Young, she has her first adult debut coming out in September, and it's called Spells for Forgetting. And Spells for Forgetting is really different from anything that she's written thus far, but it's absolutely phenomenal. I'm not at liberty at the moment to give like a full out review, so I'm going to save that. I'm going to film it, but we're going to post it closer to the time that it actually comes out. I will say though, if you were on the fence about whether or not this is something you'd want to read, if you like her writing style in Fable and Namesake, you will love this book, I think. So put it on your pre-order list and on your TBR for sure. And then the last book I read is another one that I actually got via NetGalley, and it's called My Mechanical Romance, and it is a YA book, and it's really cute. So it's a book about girls in STEM, and she is interested in like building things and engineering things, although she has never really considered herself an engineer. Her name is Belle, and she ends up on the robotics team at this kind of elite school that she's been placed in that her mom pays for her to go. Her teacher puts her on the robotics team. There she meets Teo, who is kind of her opposite, where she has no idea what she wants to do. He is so driven and has such a perfect plan in place that he can't imagine it going wrong. And it's sort of, in this book, she sort of has to come and figure out how to like make a plan for herself, and he sort of has to be shaken up and realize that sometimes he just needs to relax. The romance, although the book is called My Mechanical Romance, I felt like the romance was almost secondary to kind of both of them having more like meaningful personal growth. Although the romance part was cute, it was a very light romance, I will say that, so it's definitely not like a spicy romance at all. But it's very cute. It's, I think, an original book. I didn't feel like it reminded me of anything particularly that I had read before, and I feel like YA particularly tends to mimic itself. And so this one was a nice surprise for me, and I really enjoyed it. But that is everything that I have read since the last time we did one of these videos. I will have book reviews coming out specifically over several of these books, so be on the lookout for those. And if there are any you specifically want to request that either A, I read, or B, I review that you've seen me talk about here, or that I talked about in my book haul previously, be sure to leave those in the comments down below. And with that, I hope you all have a great, safe rest of the day. Bye!